Let's take a look at the scenarios I left you with in the podcast. Was I right to pursue the projects or not? Next up is the A-Scan II project. Recall I had to make a critical decision and evaluate which of the two suppliers was most suitable. The criteria I used to make what was a critical career decision could probably be used in any comparison between two suppliers or potential partners. I visited both of them in Austin, Texas and Oxford, UK, and spent a full day assessing their capability and suitability for the project. You can weigh these criteria according to the AHP process I described in the podcast, but in this case there is no need to, as it is such a cut and dried case. The criteria I used were, firstly, cost. This was both for the final unit cost and the prototype development costs. Development time on this project was critical as the existing units were already failing and we needed to replace them very fast as millions of dollars worth of bonuses were dependent upon the data produced by these machines. The technical capability of the suppliers was also a key factor to consider. We needed to be sure they could actually do it. Software was also a key consideration. It needs to be robust, well supported and easy to use for the in-plant operators. Next up is business track record. Is it a business with experience of many sectors? And the number of units in the field is a test of how successful they are. Last up was service and support. How are they going to get the units installed? And how will they support the units they develop in our plants around the world? In the next part of the podcast are the actual slides that I used to justify the decision to the senior executive team in PepsiCo. I started with a brief overview of the history of each of the companies, but highlighted areas of concern or key strengths. With hindsight, I could have colour-coded these green and red to make the pros and cons even more prominent. You can see with GrafTech, the US-based option, there were serious concerns even on the very first slide over technical capability and the number of real projects they had actually completed. With IVS it was the opposite. Positives started to appear. They had robust engineering and software platforms available from their German parent company. By the end of the first slide, most of the room were siding with IVS, but we needed to delve into the data in much more detail by considering each of the selection criteria. Development costs between the two companies were pretty similar, the only exception being that GrafTech needed to charge extra for installation. The development costs, however, told a very different story. GrafTech were nearly 3 times as expensive because they needed to do much more upfront development work. IVS could reuse standard hardware and software to build the prototype around. The timelines for delivery was when the big differences between the two really started to show, and these could really hurt PepsiCo. GrafTech needed twice as long to develop the system as IVS, but at this point in the process both were equally convinced that they could deliver. When we considered technical capability, it was clear that GrafTech were specialists on both hardware and software, but primarily focused on helping customers with selection, not integration and building of new systems. When it came to software, GrafTech were planning to custom build a bespoke solution for PepsiCo, whereas IVS were using an industry standard solution that was very easy for operators to use. The real Achilles heel in GrafTech's solution was that they had only built 100 research systems, where IVS had built 7,000 working units in production plants all over the world. The final consideration was service and support. Only IVS were able to offer a truly robust solution. GrafTech expected us to build internal capability to support the units, whereas IVS had field support teams around the world and round-the-clock remote support. In the end, the decision was very easy. Even the most partisan pro-US supporters had to back my recommendation. We built the machines, and because of the reduced cost, we could put one in every production plant. We ended up with over 60 systems all over Europe, Middle East and Africa, versus the 10 originally installed over 10 years ago. The end result was on time and on budget. It ensured that PepsiCo were provided with quality potatoes and the growers with suitable bonuses based on the quality of the potatoes they supplied. I hope that you are now better equipped to make similar selection decisions when faced with this type of challenge.